Jesus freak here. Now, I was thinking, it's late at night, into the wee hours of the morning. It's 3 o'clock as I'm taping this. And I'm washing down my very late dinner, not quite breakfast. So, I got to thinking, you know, me being a child of the 80s and 90s, this was a big part of my childhood. And I had my weird ways of making it. Now, I pronounced it ramen back then because I was young and dumb. Well, I was thinking about how I make this stuff. It's like, I have different ways I make different types of ramen. Like these cheap ramen packages. Back when I was like 18, they were like 11 for $1. What I'd typically have done with those as a kid, I'd take two of them, usually the same flavor, but if I had pork and shrimp, I might mix them up, one of each. And I'd take them, I'd crush the noodles, I'd put them in a microwave dish. At the time, the one I was using most of the time was a um, repurposed whipped cream container, Cool Whip. Um, I'd put the crushed up ramen noodles in there. Then I'd put in the seasoning packet, shake some red pepper flakes over the top. Yeah, I was like that even then, 30 years ago. And just enough water to cover everything and throw it in the microwave for 345. If for some reason I was only doing one packet, I'd reduce it to more like 315 or 330. Long enough to get the water up to temp and then let it keep going for 3 minutes. I still sometimes make my ramen that way. Though these days it's always one packet. Two's just too much. Though I tend to prefer to use the stove if it's not El Cheapo types. Like I got some Nissan Rao somewhere off in the back of my non-perishable shelf. Um, and of course, this is what I actually had this morning. I figured, I'd give it a try, see how I liked it. I'd had the Shin Red. I don't remember if I've ever had Shin Black. I don't think I have. And I've had the Naguri. I can't pronounce Korean, so I'm just winging it. Um, Apparently, it's the Korean word for tanuki. If you know, you know. Anyone who's played Super Mario Brothers 3 knows what a tanuki is. Um, or if you've watched Pon Poko, which I have not. Tea, Earl Grey, hot. With these, I don't exactly make them according to direction, but I have a slightly different way of making it that I tend to prefer. And this is the way I've made them for years. In fact, I think I've made it this way for 25 years, maybe more. Back then, it was really hard to find the Korean ramen. There was only one store in the area, and that's the Tops on the other side of town. Which, by the way, that's where I'm headed today, although not mainly to go to Tops. I'm planning to go to Michael's, which opened a few months ago in the same plaza. But they were the only place that had the Korean ramen. So, with this particular variety, not this, I mean, I do this with Shin Red too. Um, they tell you to start with half a liter of water, bring it up to temp, and then add everything. And then let it go for about 4.5 minutes. I actually do something a little bit different. What I do is I only add 350 mils, which is a cup and a half. That way, instead of getting more of a soupy ramen, I get more of a saucy ramen. But it's enough to do the job. And I add in the seasoning packets right away. So they're in the water as it comes up to temperature. And then I add in the dry vegetables later. The result's a little more to my taste. It's also a little easier to carry around to go from the stove to my chair. One sugar, one stevia seems to be the right amount for this stuff. Anyway, so I figured I'd try this out because I hadn't had it before. And it had been sitting on my shelves for months. 4 packages of it. Got it in a 4-pack at Wally World. I'm like, you know what? I got all this ramen here. And I want to have a little more room to fit the stuff I just bought the other day. So I'll eat a package. I think I'll try this one. So I did it. And you know what? This ain't bad. It's about what I expected. Wasn't a lot of the dried vegetables. I mean, for cheap instant ramen, what do you really expect? There were a couple little pieces of fried tofu in there. Which, if I want, I usually have some tofu around and I keep forgetting to use it. But it's like, that's something I do use in soup is fried tofu. So, just getting ideas. Anyway, let's avoid this getting too long. Jesus freak out.